I've been quite lucky. I've always been quite receptive. I've always had quite a strong response, and it's been quite uncomplicated for me, although it has taken time to build a relationship. So with Tara, it has taken a bit of time. I had a stronger response to other figures. And at Tara, I remember I went to Tara Loka, which has been a big part of building my relationship with Tara. And that's the Women's Retreat Centre in Wales, and Tara Loka means the realm of Tara. And I bought a small figure of her there, and I felt quite intimidated by it. I couldn't put it on my shrine. It felt like she was demanding too much of me or something. So that was really interesting. It has taken time to build trust in her. And actually, at Tara Loka, I bought this one, so a bigger, much greener one, which sits very proudly on my shrine. So I've kind of developed that relationship with her over time. And particularly in the last year, it's really intensified. So it's really been nice to reflect on that and what that means. So I see her both as like a source of refuge, so literally somewhere that I go when I'm in difficulty, and an inspiration to the qualities that I want to embody. And I can see her quite vividly, like as a being that I can have a relationship with, but I also see her as a form that represents something even bigger than her, like a representation of reality and an accessible way for me to kind of have any engagement with something that feels quite ungraspable. So she feels quite vivid for me in both of those ways. And they actually talk about Tara being one of the most accessible ways of accessing enlightenment, I think, because she's so beautiful and so warm and loving. So that's really true for me. So I'm going to talk about the three particular challenges that I've faced in lockdown and how my practice with Tara has helped that. So the first one is loneliness, a disconnection. I've literally been quite isolated. And with that comes for me quite a lot of self-doubt as well. I've put FOMO on my notes, like genuinely, being isolated, then there's a double whammy. Is everybody else having fun without me, even in lockdown? And so for that one, what I've really kind of reflected on is her compassion. Really imagining her compassion and her love for me in this space, and actually since I've moved in, there's been very few beings that have crossed the threshold here apart from me and my new kitten. So I've really sort of filled the house with Tara, literally and metaphorically. So I've got images of her everywhere. I've got rupas of her everywhere. Quotes that inspire me about her. There's a quote at the moment that's really inspiring me, which is, whatever situation arises, let it be the awakening of compassion. And as soon as I sort of say that to myself, it evokes it for me and for others. And I think that's the thing, is that actually through connecting to her, I connect to others, and then I don't feel alone anymore. So that's been really, really powerful, and really imagining her in my meditation practice and doing pujas to her as well. So just going to check the time. I think I'm doing all right. Yeah, I'm doing okay. So the second thing is the particular challenge for me has been fear, particularly around uncertainty and not being in control. And actually, it was funny, when I was writing these three things that I've had challenges with, they're things I've always had challenges with, actually. I've realised they've just been intensified through lockdown. So yeah, uncertainty and not being in control is a big one for me. And as I mentioned, Tara's green is the colour of fearlessness, and that mudra of invoking the refuge to the three jewels. She's also said to be able to combat the 8 great terrors. And I've realised that fear is manifested for me at lots of different levels in lockdown. So I remember the first time I had to go to the supermarket after lockdown, I was really, really frightened, and all the way up to really being concerned about my family members. So it's also, there's been terrors on every level, really. And Tara's been really available for me for the small and the big. That's what I really love about her. Like in the mundane and the real anxieties, I've got a meeting, what am I going to do? I call on Tara. To the, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with my life? Great fears. Tara's always really present for me. And I do often recite the Green Tara mantra. And I realize I often recite that in the car, actually. Often Tara's quite often with me in the car. She's often quite sat next to me. So I'd often, on the way to that first supermarket trip, I was reciting the Tara mantra. and that often just sort of soothes me down. I realize often when I'm sat in the car, I'm a bit nervous as well, I'll put the radio on and she'll have a bit of a dance with me as well. Like there's a lightness that she brings. And I think one of the things that I really, when I'm feeling fearful, is a lack of perspective. And Tara really brings with her an enormous amount of perspective. I often imagine her really, really enormous, like really big as the world, and it just makes me really right-sized. So either she's really big and that gives me perspective, or she's sort of dancing around, it just brings a bit of lightness. She brings whatever I need. So yeah, I really rely on her for that. And the other aspect is nature. So I really imagine when I'm walking in nature, that the green is Tara's green, and it's her sort of fearlessness and love imbibed into everything. That can be really really calming for me. And then the final thing is overwhelm. I've put overwhelm with exclamation mark in my notes. Just feeling overwhelmed by it all, and sometimes that coming out as procrastination, feeling like I don't want to do anything, and sometimes wanting to do everything and overscheduling. Again, that was something I did before, but it seems to be really exacerbated during this time. And what I just absolutely love about Tara is her combination of ease and stillness with spontaneous compassionate activity, and that's really represented by her stillness and her as I said, her leg in meditation pose and her other leg reaching out. And it just really reminds me, just evoking that even that posture for me really reminds me that in order to be helpful, which I really want to do, and in order to serve her, I need to be rooted in ease and rest and wisdom, and I can just come back to myself. One of the things that I do is I often have a direct communication with her. What works for me is I will often write to her, and then and she'll write back to me, and that's quite a strong practice for me. I'll do it like I just don't know what to do, and something will come back, and it's often take a breath, pause. So even in that really practical way, she's very available to me, and I never need to prove myself to her. That initial thought that I had where I thought she was demanding something of me, like she only rejoices in me. And she also wants me to be my best self. So if I'm nervous about something that's happening at work or not quite sure how to show up, I just ask myself, who does she want me to be? How can I embody her? How can I bring her into this situation? And I've had her Rupa on my desk during lots of difficult meetings, and she's one of the benefits from working from home. So that's been really that's my 10 minutes. So I just wanted to just really quickly say that she works in mysterious ways. So I do pray to Tara as well, and a couple of days ago I was saying, how can I be closer to you? And Moksha Tara that same day asked me to do this talk. So I was just so grateful to have the chance to reflect on her, and lovely to share it with you guys.
Hello, I hope you can hear me. I have a lot of technical difficulties this end. Yeah, thanks for that, Emma. And yeah, thanks to Moksha Tara for asking me to give this talk. I'm going to split my talk. It's about white Tara, the other flavour. I'm going to split my talk into 3 parts. So I'm going to talk about my contact with white Tara, and certainly the initial sort of contact, my relationship with white Tara. I'm going to talk about aspects of what she symbolises, but mostly I'm going to talk about how I bring white Tara into my practice, into my life, into my work in these difficult times. So I'm just going to talk briefly then about my initial sort of meeting with white Tara. I was aware of white Tara, there being another Tara, if you like, and then I was on retreat at Pabaloka men's retreat, and so I was in really good conditions. Just in the morning sit, just in the morning meditation. And I was in the great shrine room there, which is absolutely beautiful, and it's full of all of Alaka's artwork, all the different Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And I was gazing around the room with a lot of love and a lot of gratitude, especially towards Alaka, I think, for these works of art. And I was sat right next to this image of white Tara. This has been kindly purchased for me by Peter Benyon and Peter Wells. They were on the retreat with me, they heard this image. I could just imagine White Tara looking down on the world, seeing all the suffering, and just I was just overwhelmed, and I shall use the word assailed, because it was like that. I was sort of overwhelmed, assailed with all kinds of feelings of love, gratitude, hope, joy, and it really was a powerful experience. So unlike Emma's experience of a slow burn, it was really wham for me. You know, I was struck very forcibly by White Tara. But I think it's kind of a reflection on this, and I think it's quite telling that I was in good conditions. My heart was open. I was using my imagination as well. And just reading a book recently by Alan Wallace, Buddhism with an Attitude, he says in there that a lovely little sentence that imagination has the power to help us engage with realities beyond our immediate experience. And I think that's just a fantastic little sentence. So yeah, I shan't say any more about that. So the image of Tara, or what Tara symbolizes, yeah, she's full of symbolism. Sangha said that with Buddhist art, what we should really do with any Buddhist art is look at it like a symbol first, and look at it like art second. And he also said that we shouldn't think that symbols have just one meaning. Our reaction to the symbol is important. So I'm going to talk about the aspects of White Tara symbolism that's actually important to me right now. So if you were to meet White Tara, if you were in a room with White Tara, you wouldn't sort of say, what's with the what's with the lotus? I think you'd be struck by the eyes, and you'd sort of think, well, you know, what's with the unusual amount of eyes? She's got 7 eyes, 2 in the palms, 2 in the soles of the feet. She's got the 2 regular eyes, and she's got the 3rd eye in her forehead. And it's these eyes that I want to talk about at the minute. It's these that have been really sort of speaking to me at the moment. So these eyes see suffering. They see suffering. And I've read up about these eyes. I've listened to a few talks on Tara, and I've heard people going about why there's 7, etc., this sort of thing. And it's all very good, but I'm going to talk about what they mean to me. So I like to think of the eyes in the feet, the soles of the feet, as seeing the path, seeing the way to the suffering, seeing the way right to the root of the suffering. I like to see the hands, the eyes in the hands, and mold it and change it into something more useful, seeing what really needs to be done. The eye in the forehead, I liken to the Dharma eye, if you like, the eye that sees this suffering with absolute clarity, with absolute wisdom. But then also there's these 2 very human eyes, and I think that's the beautiful thing there, that she sees this suffering, but she also recognized in the suffering the unique being that is in the suffering, that is suffering, the unique human being that is in the middle of it all. And this is about meeting suffering. It's about witnessing and meeting suffering for me. So in my job, I come across a lot of suffering on a daily basis. I work as a prison chaplain, a Buddhist prison chaplain. And I noticed it's very easy for me, but I slip into a habit of meeting the person, meeting the suffering, and then really trying to come up with the Dharma answer. And there is a Dharma answer, but it might not necessarily be what that person needs or wants to hear, certainly at that particular moment. And I kind of sussed that what I was really doing was trying to fix the suffering, so I could just get away from the suffering. I wasn't comfortable as a witness to the suffering. It was making me uncomfortable. It was making me suffer. And so I had that attitude that I think mostly have when it comes to suffering, that's something bad and it's something to be got out of the way. And so, yeah, I was trying to sort of alleviate my own suffering rather than alleviate the suffering of the other person. Yeah, and studying the 7-point mind training recently, struck by the phrase, turn adversity into the path towards enlightenment. You know, if we stop seeing suffering as something bad and to be got out of the way, if we can turn towards it rather than turn away from it, then we can learn to grow spiritually from that. And it's a matter of then me being able to be comfortable with the suffering of another person, to really help that person, really see that other person with the eyes of white Tara. And so, yeah, I also, lastly, with the eyes, it's that I am seen. I feel seen by white Tara. I feel then that I am not alone. And I think that's important as well. I am not alone with this suffering. It's not just me that's trying to do something. I can't fix it all on my own. I'm not alone. You know, I've got white Tara with me. And that's another imaginative connection. So, like Emma, I often do the mantra, the white Tara, in my car as well when I'm driving. And I've done recently done a puja for Tara, and I'm just going to finish by just reading you. It's a 7-fold puja for white Tara. Well, it's for Tara, and it's the entreaty and supplication part. So I'm just going to finish on this because I really love this. It's very beautiful. And it really sums up white Tara for me. So it's the entreaty and supplication. Love travels faster than sound, swifter than light. It traverses the galaxy in a moment. O Queen of great compassion, wherever your love is needed, it is instantly there. Caught in a hurricane of suffering, winds tearing at my body and mind. I have only to call your name, Tara, 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 and the gales of longing and fear are pacified. Who could have imagined that those 2 tiny syllables contained so much love, tender love, fearless love, the love of all the Buddhas? May I and all beings always call on you, Tara, 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 and in response, may you shower the Dharma of your great love instantly upon us all. So I hope you heard that. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Emma and Mark, for those beautiful talks. I feel like it's really evoked something in me of the presence of both green Tara and white Tara, who are both very, very dear to my heart as well. That was lovely. So I'm going to talk tonight about my connection with Avalokiteshvara. And the context for my practice at the moment is that I live with my husband and my 8-year-old son, who helped me create this lovely shrine behind me with hands and with people on, and a family Sangha event on Sunday. So I work 3 days a week as a psychologist and as one of the directors of a small private therapy business, work which can be quite demanding and quite time consuming. In terms of my own mind, the precept I've always found most challenging is the one around stillness, simplicity and contentment. So I tend to crave doing things more than having things. Although these days, generally, those things tend to be positive, skillful things that I enjoy and which nourish me and other people. However, the constant lesson for me, which I have to learn over and over again, is that no matter how positive and skillful and enjoyable those activities are, if I cram them all into my diary back to back, one after the other, it actually leaves me very vulnerable to negative mental states, feeling grumpy and resentful, and leaves my meditation full of restlessness and distraction. So this existing habitual pattern, I think, like Emma had said, of being busy has just been massively exacerbated by the new conditions of lockdown. So in the last 10 years, I'd worked really hard to kind of carve out some spaces for myself. And when my son went to school, I had 2 days a week, which I would very much devote to my practice of friendship and meditation and study. And I realized I sort of saw these as my me time. And then with the lockdown, that time has just completely vanished overnight. So when I'm not at work, I'm looking after my son at home pretty much. So my practice since then has been very much about working with this tension between wanting to carry on doing the things that nourish me and that feel meaningful and put me in positive mental states, but also being aware of a need to rest and relax and find moments of doing nothing. And Avalokiteshvara has really helped me with that. So when I was ordained 3 years ago, I was given the practice of visualizing the four-armed Avalokiteshvara. And I think Aryadasa has an image he can put up to show people of that figure. So this is an image of Avalokiteshvara that's part of a much bigger painting of what we call the refuge tree that's in the shrine room at Adhisthana in Herefordshire. And I'd really recommend, if you go there, taking some time to study this picture. Beautiful paintings of lots of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So when I meditate and bring Avalokiteshvara to mind, it's very much something I experience in my body rather than trying to conjure up a picture of him out there. So it's more of a process of trying to evoke or imagine what it would be like to be him, and then just being curious, sort of noticing the effect that has on my body and my mind. And I was thinking it's a little bit like a child dressing up and pretending to be like a firefighter or a nurse or something you want to be. So when I'm visualizing Avalokiteshvara, I'm quite literally imagining what I want to be when I grow up. And at a more conceptual level, this form of Avalokiteshvara is often said to represent the quality of equanimity. And I just find that an incredibly beautiful, big, mysterious quality. I don't pretend to understand it fully, but I'm really drawn to wanting to understand it and embody it more and more in my life. So the best I can do to kind of describe it now is it a very sort of alive sense of stillness and openness and love. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about how Avalokiteshvara, how he's sitting, represents that. So he sits cross-legged on a mat made of moonlight on a white lotus, and his body is made of white light. And when I imagine having a body made of white light, I feel pure, open, relaxed, spacious. So he's very symmetrical and very stable and grounded, and he has this sort of unshakable quality. So when I sit like this, I connect with a feeling of stability and space low in my belly, and this sense of confidence and contentment. And over the years, this has become a feeling that I can really come back to again and again in meditation. And it isn't dependent on whether I'm getting what I want or what I don't want in my life outside of that. It's this sort of deep inner sense of everything is going to be all right. And with it comes a sense of confidence that I'll be able to respond to whatever life throws at me. So contentment for me also involves consciously reflecting on the aspects of my life that I'm grateful for right now, rather than all the things that I might like to be different at the moment. So often really simple things like just having a healthy body that's capable of sitting cross-legged on the floor, or having a warm house to live in, or being able to see the smile on my son's face and the sunlight on his hair. So that list is endless. And when I'm really in touch with these things in my present experience, I don't need anything to be different. I don't need to reach out for anything else or push anything away. So one of the things that you might have noticed in the form of Avalokiteshvara, this form of Avalokiteshvara, is he's got two pairs of arms, and the central ones are joined in this gesture, which is probably very familiar to you from saluting the shrine. So we talk about this as the Anjali Mudra. And what Avalokiteshvara is doing here is that in his hands, he's holding a beautiful jewel called the Chintamani. So the Chintamani is the wish-fulfilling jewel, and it's a symbol of the bodhicitta. So that aspiration to gain enlightenment for the sake of all living beings. And so when I put my hands together in that gesture, in reverence, it's like the space between our hands is the jewel, and our hands themselves are the lotus. So we are the lotus, this kind of growing lotus. So the lotus represents ourselves as a living, growing, developing being. And the jewel is held there in our own hands and our own hearts. And Avalokiteshvara's mantra, Om Mani Padme Hung, translates as something like enlightenment, Om, the jewel in the lotus, and then in us manifested. So Avalokiteshvara holding that jewel to his heart is about reconnecting with what's most important in the world, the values I hold most dear. And so in how I plan my life, that means making time for prioritizing the activities that bring me back in touch with my faith. So meeting with my Buddhist friends, studying the Dharma, meditating and puja in particular. So on Saturday I actually did 2 pujas back to back. Lovely puja with the Barcelona Sangha on Zoom that Edward had organised, and then a puja with my good friend Liz to one of the Buddhas in the 5 Buddha mandala. So I found that really important, practicing puja and staying connected with colour and light and the positive qualities of the Buddhas in what sometimes felt like a very kind of dark and confusing time. So in meditation, coming back to the jewel means coming back to my breath and my body over and over and over again, no matter how many times I get distracted. And in my daily life, it means remembering to stop and take breaks, which I find remarkably difficult. So at work, I have a goal of trying to do 2 3-minute breathing spaces each day, which some days I manage and sometimes I don't. So just times when I stop, reconnect with my body and my breath. And there's lots of examples out there on the internet of these things, but I think probably doing anything that was just reconnecting with your own experience for 3 minutes would work pretty well. And at home, it's just trying to be opportunistic and take little breaks while my son is happily occupied, rather than immediately using that time to pick up my phone and start looking at what's on my phone, or feeling like that's the time when I need to then tidy up the kitchen. So challenging myself, can I just spend 10 minutes sitting on the bench in my garden, drinking a cup of tea, or lying on my back, watching the clouds before I move on to the next thing? And I do notice that the days that I manage to do that, I feel so much better, so much calmer, so much more in touch with that equanimity of Avalokiteshvara than on the days when I don't. So in Avalokiteshvara's left hand, he holds a beautiful open lotus. This is not a lotus, but I was going to hold something anyway. So this is a little flower that I grew in my garden over lockdown. And I've really enjoyed just watching little flowers come and bloom over this time. That's my 9-minute alarm. And for me, when Avalokiteshvara holds up that lotus, what he's saying is that enlightenment is possible. He's saying to me, enlightenment is possible. It's possible for you and it's possible for everyone. No matter what happened to you, no matter how bad a mood you're in at the moment, enlightenment is possible. And it also shows that enlightenment is beautiful. And I also like that there's a lotus, because in my head, I always remember that the lotus grows out of the mud. It has very humble beginnings, just like us. And that's been very comforting for me at the moment, that no mud, no lotus. And actually trying to use some of the difficult experiences over this time as a kind of remembering that's actually something that's helping me grow. And then in the final thing, in Avalokiteshvara's right hand, he holds a mala. So that can be used for kind of counting mantras. And in my mind, this represents all the living beings just going round and round those cycles of the wheel of life. And on this particular mala, I don't know if you can see, but the beads are made of lotus seeds. So it's like each being is there's all these tiny little enlightenment beings in potential. So just remembering that all of those beautiful, precious beings are out there, and that I'm one of those beings, one among many. So the mala reminds me that my practice isn't just about me, that I'm not the center of the universe. As the poet Milosz writes, love means to look at oneself the way one looks at distant things, for you are one thing about many. So I've had a real practice over this time of when I felt overwhelmed and up against it, just trying to bring in others, perhaps bringing in, first of all of the other parents who are working, who are in a similar situation to me. And then also bringing in all the people that have different experiences. So people who are perhaps lonely and isolated, or people who are very worried for friends and relatives, people who are sick, and people who have lost their jobs, but also people who are finding unexpected joy and connection and blessings in the situation. So trying to sort of bring all of those to mind and just wishing them all well. So I'm going to end with part of a poem by T.S. Eliot that for me really evokes Avalokiteshvara's presence of stillness and equanimity. At the still point of the turning world, neither flesh nor fleshless, neither from nor towards, at the still point, there the dance is. Thank you.